The Hong Kong government has published the draft of a new national security law. Victor Gao is joining us from Beijing. He is vice president of the Center for China and Globalization. He's also a former Chinese Foreign Service officer. Thank you for your time, as always, Mr. Gao. So the bill is expected to be approved, but to what extent do you think that authorities will address rights concerns that have been called for by many diplomats, legal scholars, rights advocacy groups?
Thank you very much for having me. I think the passing of this national security law in Hong Kong will be a landmark event in the course of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. This, ironically, just restores the situation back to before 1997, because unlike what the British claimed, before 1997, there was very significant national law operations in Hong Kong. It was not done by the Chinese side, of course. It was done by the British side. And the purpose was to protect the national interest of the British government and the British Hong Kong government. When the British left Hong Kong, end of June 1997, they brought away all the operatives and archives of the national security operation. And by the basic law, China need to fill in that gap right away. However, it was delayed by more than 2 decades. By whom? By those people in Hong Kong, which completely disregarded this very important provision in the basic law. They dragged their feet, they created all the situation, delayed the enactment of the national security provision in Hong Kong. Now, yes, indeed, there are people in the world who claim that this national security law in Hong Kong will further erode the so-called human rights in Hong Kong. However, if you look around at any country in the world, the US, Britain, France, or any other country, as well as their territories, name any single territory which does not have a national security operation.
Well, in fact, you're right in that, lawyers who've analyzed the draft
protect the national security interest.
Well, lawyers who've analysed the draft have actually said that at first glance that, elements of the revised sentences are similar to Western ones. Where they are different is that provisions such as those for sedition, for state secrets, are much broader and potentially tougher.
Who makes that judgment? That judgment can only be made by the people in Hong Kong and under the overall leadership of the central government. No other country, Britain or the United States or any other Western countries, has any justification to interfere in that process.
But the problem is that the criticism,
operations,
while it might be coming from overseas, the criticism is that people in Hong Kong themselves have less space to make these criticisms. You yourself are saying that it's a landmark law. It will be a landmark law. So why is leader John Lee in such a rush to pass the bill? He said that it should be done at full speed.
That law or that provision under consideration right now should have been enacted immediately after the transfer of sovereignty from Britain to China in 1997. This is the mega trend. Now, why it was delayed from 1997 all the way to today, which is already 2024, we know the reason. We know the riots and then the anarchy prevailing in Hong Kong for a few years. And this is exactly the reason that in Hong Kong there was no national security law immediately after 1997. Because just imagine any country, any territory, which can be open to the interference from anyone, domestically as well as abroad, for international security considerations. No, there is no country, no jurisdiction which will open itself, expose itself to foreign interference or domestic interference as far as national security law is concerned.
Again, the criticism is how Hong Kong is doing it. Given its, its status as a financial hub, the protests that we have seen in the past, you described them as anarchy, but given Hong Kong's status, can it risk not protecting individual rights?
I don't think there is any need to disregard any individual right. That's not the problem. For example, Wall Street is in Manhattan, which is in the city of New York, in the state of New York, and there should be freedom of operations for finance. However, any violation of the US national security law be it happening in Wall Street or otherwise, should be dealt with as treason. And the US law about national security violation is very strict. And I think there is also death sentence for the heinous offenses. So let's be using the same standard. Call national security violation as it is. Call safety of individual civil rights as it is. And I hope all civil rights for any individual in Hong Kong should be fully protected.
All right,
whereas
Mr. Gao.
the national security interests should also be fully protected at the same time.
Victor Gao joining us from Beijing there. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your... Thank you.